I know that primary sources can be challenging to find. Remember that one source for primary materials are newspapers, as long as they're from the time period. And so, for example, when I go to the A to Z database list from the Shapiro library, and I choose those that include primary sources, there are lots of newspapers here. Now, some of these won't cover the period that we're looking at, so you do need to take a little bit of time to go through them. But for example, British periodicals might be useful. The Boston Globe might be useful. There are Chinese newspapers if you read Chinese, but some of them might be in English. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked too much at those. But one of the things I noticed is that it can be a little bit hard sometimes to find them. I know that, so it does take a little bit. I was playing around to see what I could find. There are articles from the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times. Those are often really good to use. But additionally, um, when I searched for, instead of going here, when I just searched for newspaper, see, this is one that I found that I liked. Maybe it's not. I actually searched for Times because I was hoping we had the London Times. Some colleges do subscribe to that database, and the Shapiro Library doesn't seem to, which is okay. Oh, here we go. News and newspapers ProQuest. So when I go there, it's going to ask me what of the databases included I want to look at. And you'll notice I already have a search term here, Churchill in Germany, to think about Winston Churchill and Germany during World War I. And so I would encourage you to look at this. You do need to check by date because you're going to have a lot of stuff on World War II, of course. But for example, when I went down, I found the Globe and Mail, which is a British newspaper. The Guardian, the Observer are also British newspapers. Those would be really good to use. And so when I search the Globe and Mail for Churchill, Germany, and by the way, I know this is going to be good because the coverage is from 1844 to 2021. And so obviously World War I was 1914 through 1918. And so this is going to be really useful for that potentially. So when I search for Churchill in Germany, and it doesn't like it because I hit the back button, it shows me this page. Now it's going to give me dates here, like 1886. That is not what I need. And Lord Churchill talking about Lord R. Churchill, that's clearly not Winston Churchill. I believe it's his father, but I very well could be wrong. But look down here. The sea is free. Germany throttled. No relaxation until Germany gives in unconditionally, says Winston Churchill. This is from the Toronto Globe. So I thought this was the British. There's a Globe and Mail in Britain, but this is actually from Toronto. That's fine. Still works. And then over here, I can just change my date range to give me more specifics. And so I'm just going to put 19, let's do 1913 through 1919. And click update. And so now I still have a lot of results, 229. This again is useful information. These are primary sources because they come from the time period and it's being written about what's happening right then. So these are really useful. Notice here from relatively early in the war, 1914. This is Churchill saying, "Oh, the enemy's strength is rapidly sapping." And of course, we know that's not true, right? Historically, with 2020 hindsight. So here is here it is. For example, very useful information. How would you cite this? You would cite this by, there's no author here. There usually isn't for newspaper accounts. So you would just start with the title. You don't need the whole, you don't need this part down here, Winston Churchill's cheering words. You would start with Britain must win in the Wearing War. And you would not capitalize, you would not use all caps like this. Instead, you would have something that looks like this. So I'm going to make my font bigger than yours would be, so it's easier to read here. So again, you're going to start, this is your bibliography. So your bibliography entry for it. for this article would be Britain must win, whoops, in the Wearing War, period. And then you would put the globe. You could just put globe too. For a newspaper, if the name of the paper doesn't include the town or the town and country, you put that in brackets after like this. There's other ways to do this. Might not actually be 100% Turabian. I'm very flexible about that. If you do it in parentheses instead, I don't care. Some people will. I don't because I don't remember at the top of my head. Um, and then I believe it's a comma and the date. And the date will be, it's in really tiny print up here, but you should be able to find it somewhere. November 28th, 1914. You don't need to worry about pages because different editions of a paper had different pages. So although it says here page 1, just ignore that. And then so I know, or the person, whoever's grading it knows, put the name of the database that you got it from. So up here, see where it says ProQuest Historical Newspapers? You can just put that. You could put the Globe and Mail too. So that's your bibliography entry. A footnote for it is going to look really similar. It's going to still start with the title. And wearing war, I think here means like a war of attrition, which is what we're talking about, I think, this week. We talked about last week or this week. And then we just put commas here instead of periods. Again, the date. Spell out the date, don't abbreviate it. And again, the name of the database. If you then had a second one from the same article, you would do a shortened version of the title. Like, whoops, I can't type. Britain must win. Something like that. So I hope this helps. I personally, as a historian, find old newspapers really interesting. They give really good insight of how things are being reported at the time. I think they're really helpful for primary sources because, among other things, they are relatively accessible. Much more so than like Churchill's World War I papers are out there, but you have to travel to England to get to them, for example, I believe. Some of them might have been published, but like published and you have to buy them, like from Amazon or something. So newspapers are a great source for primary sources. Now, you always want to keep in mind that you're seeing this through the eyes of a reporter of some sort. And so the editorial lens of the paper, right? It might be, pro-war or anti-war. It might be pro-Churchill or anti-Churchill. That's especially true when you look at an American paper talking about what was going on in Europe before the U.S. entered the war. But that itself is also really interesting. Like, how did American opinion change over time? So I encourage you to consider these historical newspaper databases as potential primary sources for your writing. I think they're really useful. I think you can get a lot of good information out of them. And again, this is just one of several that are available. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions about it, please let me know, and thanks for watching.